Blessings, Hetep and Ma'at. That means I'm offering you truth. I'm Asneferka. I am the mother of Tehuti Ma'at. I want to welcome you to today's energy reading. As you can see, if you're returning, I want to welcome you back. And you can see that things are a little different. If it's your first time here, welcome. I am a sacred wisdom keeper of ancient Kemetic, ancient African sacred science. And I'm also a farmer, a healing artist, and a revolutionary, many more things. And Tehuti Ma'at is a revolutionary instrument that I co-founded in order to create different institutions and all of the different medicines that we need in order to come together and resurrect the collective African spirit. Okay, so today we're doing an energy reading, and regardless of when you're tuning into this message, this is the time for you to get the message, right? It's a divine alignment. So just trust that there's a message here for you if you're here at whatever point you are. I did pull this reading on the beach at the new moon, which is the final new moon of the Gregorian calendar year of 2013. For those who are kind of in the loop or at least know a bit about the work that we've been doing, 2020 was year zero for us. And as we align back with the cosmic clock, the spring is actually the beginning of the year. So we begin the year at the equinox. So we are technically moving through the third quarter or entering into the third quarter, the final quarter of year 3. And we're going to actually be entering year 4 in April or March of 2024. So I think those things are very significant because there's a very significant shift that's happening, and this reading is really illustrating what is the first part of this revolutionary experience that is happening on the planet right now. So as you can see, I have another camera here so that you can actually see the cards that I'm going to be reading. And if you are not a member of Tehuti Ma'at, I really want to encourage you to join Tehuti Ma'at. You can find more information about Tehuti Ma'at at tehutimaat.org. And that's also how you would get access to the full reading. So today I'm only going to be covering, I usually cover just the top 3 cards. I think I'm going to cover a bit more of this emotional level because it is so significant in today's reading. So I just want to put that out there for anyone who's interested and wants to join the militia, right? That's our membership program. If you join even at the Kingdom rank, which is $22 a month, then you're able to get access to our moonly report. So you'll get the December report, but each moon cycle we put out a report basically covering the energies, all of the different programs and offerings that we have for our collective. We have our healing ciphers, we have our community connect, we have our warrior workouts, and so many other things that you have access to if you are a member. And one of those things is the exclusive reading. So you'll get the full reading. I love to do that as well because this is sacred science, and it is important that certain things be private, right? So, you know, we don't want to cast pearls onto swine, and we want to make sure that we are treasuring the very, very beautiful and sacred science of our ancestors. So that allows me to share more for people who are part of our collective. So one of our cooperative ventures is actually Coins and Karis. So that's where we're bringing you this reading from. If you are interested in supporting Coins and Karis, it is a cooperative healing marketplace where we offer spiritual goods and services. I do offer personal readings. So if you're interested in anything in relation to the readings or any spiritual assistance, spiritual coaching, then you can tap in via coinsandkaris.com. And you can also follow us on Instagram. We actually just did a live stream yesterday on the Instagram, myself and Danny, one of the other members of the co-op. And we touched on the new moon energies. And again, we're going to be covering like the Mercury retrograde that just began today, all of those things. So you can check that out on the Coins and Karis Instagram. So without further ado, I want to go ahead and get into today's reading. And it's very significant because in the present moment, Mercury or Tehuti actually just entered into a retrograde cycle, which is going to be all the way until January 1st. But like I said, if you're here watching this at some other time, there's still a message here for you. In eternity, there really is no, linear time. So just make sure that you receive intuitively whatever the message is for you. But the reading really does illustrate the specific energy of this cycle that we're about to move through, that just began yesterday, and it's going to bring us into mid-January when we have the next new moon. Now, because we have a retrograde happening, the theme of this reading is really about being able to embrace chaos and confusion, because there's going to be a lot of undoing and a lot of shattering and a lot of chaos and darkness, right? So challenging energies that are going to be coming up during this cycle. So that's the key to this reading. But the important thing is that you have everything that you need to face those challenges that are going to come forward. More than likely, it's going to be your fears, probably subconscious fears, but they are going to become, your attention is going to be brought to them, and you're going to be very aware of these fears, because it's not going to be anything new. And it's really going to be an opportunity for you to exercise the things that you have been learning throughout this past revolution, right? This past year that we've been moving through, and all the growth that's been happening, everything that happened during the eclipse season that we just moved through back in October. So really, you're ready for it. But there are going to be some challenging energies during this moon cycle. You're really going to have to trust that you have what it is that you need. And using what you've learned for your protection is key, because your integrity is going to be tried. It's going to be a very testy energy that we're moving through. And come January, there's going to be very significant shifts that are going to affect probably the whole world and the collective, right? But however we deal with that personally is based on where we are. So it is important to make sure that you're doing that reflective work. Mercury retrograde energies are very, very challenging for some people, but the key to it is to align with the energy. If you align with the energy, you can allow yourself to just coast and float, and you can enjoy the energy, and you can be supported by the energy, because Mercury retrogrades are really the most graceful periods, right? It's a pulse that happens where we get this opportunity every season to kind of pull back and reflect, to make sure that we integrate in fully into our minds the changes that have been happening to us cosmically, spiritually, emotionally. We have to bring that into our mind space so that we can bring it into our physical reality. So that alignment process is what's happening right now. So we do have to be tested. It's almost like, your final exam, to make sure you got what you need to move on into this next stage and phase. And a lot of us talk about revolution without recognizing that revolution is not pretty, right? Revolution is shattering everything that was so that we could rebuild it into something else. And we're going to really start to see what that looks like. There's going to be a huge separation and divide, right? That shattering is going to happen. And it is going to be through a lot of confusion. So it is very important to be rooted. That's what this reading is really speaking to, is making sure that the enlightenment and the awareness and the growth that you've gone through mentally, that you're able to utilize that to navigate through that darkness, right? And recognize that the darkness is not something to be afraid of. The darkness is not something that's inherently evil or bad. It's necessary. And this is about embracing our fears and the wisdoms that our fears hold. It's about moving through the chaos to find the necessity for order, right? Which is why we have and we exist in this dualistic plane, and we're moving into union and into wholeness to recognize that everything is one, right? We know that because we know we're in a universe. But essentially, in order for us to return back to that oneness, we're going to have to really completely dissolve and release a lot of the grotesque and disturbing and just unnecessary aspects that have really gotten us to this degenerate point in humanity, right? So all of the evils and the things that are coming to light, the corruption, and you already know all the stuff that's coming up right now. And I'm going to be touching on that in another series, so stay tuned for that, because the taboos series is really going to be touching on a lot of that, a lot of those issues and topics that are coming up right now that we usually try to keep in the closet or under the bed, and just making sure that we're actually dealing with those energies. That's what's going to be coming up during this cycle. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and zoom in here so that you could get a closer look. Sorry about that. So the way that the energy reading works is, I want to make sure that you get a good look. So the way the energy readings work is, this is my pyramid reading. So if you're interested in doing the same spread, it's a 10-card reading, and it goes through the 4 elements. So we start with the fire, which is the guiding principle of the entire reading. And it literally informs everything, that the energy that we're moving through. And today the card is actually Kun and Kemet, right? Which is actually the name of the land of our ancestors in the Nile Valley or the Hapi Valley in Kemet, ancient Egypt, right? So that particular region of Africa at that point was called Kemet. And what Kemet means is black land, right? And when we think about the black soil, right, coming into my farming bag, we're talking about fertility, right? So we've been programmed to think of darkness and blackness in a negative connotation. And it's very important for us to return back to the fact that the womb, when we're gestating in our mother's womb, right? I'm going to bring us in here. When we're gestating in the womb space, we are in that cosmic darkness. We are constantly in the darkness of the cosmic womb. Our planet is in the cosmos, right? We're in space. So it is our sun and our solar system that creates order, right? It has a system. We're in this beautiful, revolutionary, mathematical spiral as we're moving through the universe. But ultimately, we are in darkness. And we just have the illusion of light that's birthed within that darkness. And essentially, it is important for us to return back to that neutral perspective on darkness, to recognize that the same way that the darkness of the soil is able to decay and decompose the seed so that it could sprout, there's beauty and there's wisdom, and the light is birthed from within that darkness. That is where the wisdom lies. That is the sacred feminine energy. And we've been in a cycle of humanity where the feminine has been suppressed and dominated. So now that we're coming back into balance, the feminine has to be lifted. So we have to get in tune with our emotions. We have to get comfortable with the subconscious, the darkness, what's going on inside of us. We have to really get more comfortable with that. And those are the things that are going to come up. So the card itself is in the house of pets. Sorry, I'm going to try to figure out how to make sure you can see it. I always like to make sure that people are exercising their intuition. So I want you to think about whatever comes up for you intuitively and note that for yourself. Whatever thoughts, ideas, people's, anything that comes up for you is very important, because ultimately the cards are just a tool. It's a reflection of whatever is happening in your subconscious, and it's an attempt to lift it up. And as an oracle, for me to interpret and bring forward the message of the card. But you have everything that you need. I'm a reflection of you. So ultimately, for you to apply it specifically to your life, you really want to get in tune and start exercising, listening to that intuitive instinct. So whatever comes up for you when you see the card. So Pet is the house of the heavens, right? And the card number is 1. So this is in the family of the heavens. So it's a celestial energy, which is very interesting, because when you think of Kemet, or when we say it, black land, we think of the earth. We don't necessarily think of the heavens. But what we have to recognize is, from an ancestral perspective, everything is cosmic. As above, so below. So what's happening on the earth is a reflection of what's happening above, or what's happening in the heavens, right? Which is why the alchemical process, right? The alchemy, which is our sacred science, the alchemy of being able to transform anything into value, right? Essentially transforming our pain into power, right? On an emotional level. But alchemy was seen as a very physical thing as well, when the base metals were transformed into fine metals such as gold. So another alchemy process, and even the word chem, or the chemi, al-chemit, is where it came from, which is the Arabic word that was derived from the Medu Neter, the ancient African language of Kemet, right? So it's essentially going back to that kum, which is symbolized by a burnt piece of charcoal, which was carbon, right? Or is carbon. Because when you burn that charcoal down with that hydrogen, it stays in that dark soot, right? That blackness, it's very absorbent, right? That's why you have carbon filters for water. They're very absorbent. So when you take that carbon, right, that element, and pressurize it, you have a transformation process, which essentially is alchemy, and it becomes a diamond. And when it becomes a diamond, it becomes reflective. So it completely changes the way that it actually interacts with energy. It goes from being absorbent to being reflective. So this is really very powerful sacred science. I will go into it more in the exclusive reading. But the card being one, it means it's the initiation of a new cycle. So one is always initiatory energy. It's the beginning. It's the spark, right? So when we think about Kemet, it's the leading energy in bringing us to that cosmic consciousness, because you have to rise the energy up from the earth. Just like in our energy body, in our physical body, we have the root energy that grounds us and connects us to our actual survival in the physical world. But when that energy is moved up, right, and we bring it up to our sacral, our sexual energy, and we bring it up higher to our solar plexus, and we can exercise our will through that creative force from the solar plexus and that sexual energy. We can bring it up to the heart and make sure we're moving with integrity, bring it up to the throat, arit, or chakra, and express ourselves with that integrity and with that energy, right? And then move it up into the first eye and then the crown. So it's a rising of energy, but it's supposed to circulate back down to make sure that we're actually lifting the frequency, right? Because in the world, right, this chaotic energy is always trying to keep it in density, right? The chaos is the antithesis to the cosmos, because the cosmos are in order. That's what Ma'at is. It's cosmic order. So when we look at our solar system, when we look at the patterns and the rhythms of the galaxies and the superclusters and all the different beautiful astronomical bodies in our cosmos, right, in the universe or in the multiverse, it's all in order. But that isn't all that's in existence. The majority of what's in existence is in the darkness of the chaos, which we don't even know, right? Because it's underneath the surface, it's subconscious. So I want you to think about that symbolically in terms of what may come up for you, because it's really about embracing the darkness, embracing the gravity, embracing the potential that that represents when we allow ourselves to go there. And I always encourage people to embrace it, because the only way out of it is through it. And you have to learn from it to know how to put things in order. So as things start falling apart, especially in the collective, especially those big energies that we can't control, whether that be war, whether that be just big events that happen that shut everything down, or whatever it may be, however it may manifest in this time, it's really echoing a lot of the energy that was present 2020. So I just want people to be very prepared for that. This is a really important time to do that energy work, that shadow work, going internal, right? To really be clear and centered within yourself, because those energies are going to start to come up to challenge you. So it can bring up confusion, but really it's the disillusion of structure. Things are going to start coming apart, the systems and things that we have in place. Because we're in retrograde, it's very important to recognize that a lot of things are going to be shifting and changing. It's necessary to be adaptable. And the beautiful thing is we have a lot of this Neith energy, which is Sagittarius energy, which is very expansive, but it's mutable fire. So it's able to adapt. So it's important to tap into that energy. If you do a personal reading with me, I also provide your natal chart, which will also be supportive for you, because you can see exactly where you have, what house you have Neith in your natal chart. Where was Neith in this particular energy of Sagittarius when you were born, as well as the other energies that are currently present. So I can actually express to you and provide you a reading that's personalized based on your personal energy signature, right? Based on your star print that you came in with and chose at birth, right? So that is the card number one, and that's what's influencing the entire reading. Now, as we move into the second level, this is the air element. And the air element is all about the mind, right? The mental body. And then as we move down, which I'm only going to touch on a little bit, we have, let me just organize this again because the camera stand just messed it up. We have the emotional body. This is the water element. And then we have the earth body, which is the material realm. So this is where we're really going to be challenged in a physical sense, right? This is how we can actually read it. But I'm going to really go into that in the extended reading. I'll touch on this a little bit just because there's going to be a lot of elements of decay, right? Corruption, even maybe, you know, it could come up in different ways. It could be deception. It could just be sorrow, mourning things, releasing, letting things go. That can come up in different ways for everyone. Remember, this is just about the energy that's present. The way that it is embodied and it comes up is really dependent on each person individually, right? But it's really bringing us into cycles of time, and also how do we protect ourselves emotionally? Because protecting ourselves emotionally is really going to be based on our ability to keep things private, right? This is an energy of secrecy as well. So that's going to be something that's very supportive. So I'm not going to get too into that, but I am going to go into the next two cards, which is the mind, the mental body. The mental body is really important because essentially that's what's going to create everything else underneath it. It's a flow of energy. So the way we're thinking is going to affect how we're feeling, right? Our emotions. And then that's ultimately going to create what we attract in our physical reality. So the first card on the left is the energy that's still having an influence on us, that's kind of behind us, but still influencing our mind and our thoughts. And then this energy is really what we want to invoke or evoke. It's the energy that's ahead of us that we want to make sure that we're aligning with. And that's really going to support us in getting through the cycle. So mentally speaking, I want you to think about this card. Let me show it first. I want you to think of whatever comes up for you intuitively. When you see this card, if you need to pause it, go ahead. So this is in the house of Ta, which is the family of the earth. So it is all about that alchemy, right? That process that I just went over. And this card is actually the final card in this house. It's the 8. And 8 is the number of infinity. It's also the number of no ending. And I think that that's very interesting because right underneath it in the emotional, the first card that is dealing with the emotions is the Kemetic, which is also the 8. But it's literally representing eternity, right? That 8 has no end, right? It's that symbol that we use for infinity. And it is also shown by the Kemetic or the Ouroboros, if you're familiar with the Greek interpretation, which is the serpent swallowing its own tail. So showing that there's a huge influence in this reading about cycles of time and recognizing how we're moving through eternity and the immortality of spirit and the accountability that we have to everything that was before, even if we can't remember what we experienced before we were born in our past lives or even ancestrally, right? Because we're also inheriting whatever was before us, whether that's the circumstances and situations that our parents bring us into directly, which is the most practical way to see it, but also all of the experiences of our ancestors are in our genetic memory through our blood, right? We now know through science that our blood actually houses and holds onto trauma. So it's important for us to be able to clear that energy as well. Now, Anur and Rek is the symbol of the queen, who is holding the philosopher's stone. Now, I'm going to get deeper into this in the extended reading. But if you're not familiar with alchemy, the philosopher's stone is the element that's necessary for the alchemist to perform the transformation, right? It's the secret element. And symbolically speaking, it's really speaking to having power and authority once you come through the enlightenment, because that's really what the card represents. It's really about that distillation of experience. Like once we go through something and we've experienced it and we're able to actually successfully use the wisdom from that experience in order to really transform and come into that light body, right? To actually birth that light from that darkness. So that's what enlightenment is. So because we're in an age or an era of endarkenment, right? Because we're in a degenerate cycle where humanity is decaying and going into its lowest expression, we now have to work to purify and come back around to the next cycle and come back up into our golden age, which is where these symbols and all of this wisdom came from, was the culmination of that rise into the golden age, where our ancestors created all of the beautiful megalithic sites aligned with the different constellations and informed by the cosmos, right? And then actually building structures, right? We built these things for a purpose. So I'm not going to get too deep into that right now, but essentially it's really about recognizing the importance of the enlightenment, right? The awareness, that attention that we can give to something once we've gone through it, once it's distilled, right? Think about that distilled water that has to sit there. You have to really allow it to go through the process. And I think a lot of us struggle with that patience. And because there's going to be so much chaos in the energy, is really about bringing up things from the darkness, bringing up our fears, bringing up all these subconscious things that we may be aware of to some extent, but it's going to be the wisdom, the gems from that, excuse me, from that experience that's going to inform us and support us, especially mentally, because it's still influencing us. So when those things are confronted with us, we're not necessarily going to experience it the way that we've experienced it before. We might not even fall. We're probably just going to slip, if anything. But for the most part, many of us are going to be able to just sidestep some of these challenges and just be able to adapt and shift, because this enlightenment is still influencing us based on the experiences that we just moved through and all the healing that we've already done. So when we move into the third card, Heru, again, I want you to exercise your intuition and just take note of the symbolism in the card, whatever comes up for you intuitively, right? You can pause it if you need to, if you're watching the raw play. But this is in the house of the Duat. The Duat is the underworld, or what many people misinterpret as the afterlife. Well, I guess not a misinterpretation, because this is the afterlife, right? We are not in ancestral times. We have been reborn. We're in this time now, where during the period where these temples were active, we were writing these prophecies into stone, because we knew we would be here right now, experiencing what we're experiencing right now. And the Pertemru is very significant. Again, it's another 8. So we're going back into that eternal energy, right? And that's really the consciousness that is supporting us, and the energy that's present to support us in moving through the chaos and the confusion that's about to really hit. So it's very important to recognize that this energy is here, but it's up to us to tap into it and to activate it. So Pertemru literally means coming forth from night into day. So the Duat is the 12 hours of the night. So when the sun, Ra, goes to rest in the west, it has to travel through the Duat, through the darkness, for the 12 hours until it's reborn and rises again in the east. And each of those 12 hours are considered to be gateways. And once you come through the 12th hour and you have the rising, you have the symbol of Kepra here, right? The dung beetle, which has a 28-day cycle, where from the feces and the animal waste, it lays its eggs, but rolls it into a perfect sphere for those 28 days, following the celestial cues, and then the new life is birthed, right? Those new young babies that are red and bright, right? Just like the solar disk that Kepra is carrying, show how we can transform waste into value. It's literally like compost, right? You take your food scraps and you take the waste and you allow it to transform into fertile soil, okay? So that's really what it represents. It represents birthing the day from the night. So I'm gonna go ahead and put the card back down here, but essentially this card is really declaring our victory, right? Mentally, to overcome any challenges in our mind through the confusion and the chaos that comes up, however it comes up for us. Now, most of us are going to be impacted by whatever happens on a collective note, like world events. But in your personal life, there are going to be things that come up that are very unique and specific to you and what your spirit has been cultivating and needing to learn. So it's important to recognize that this is about birthing that light from that darkness. So within your mind, it's that spiritual awakening. It's being conscious and aware, right? Giving attention to the spiritual nature of things, the unseen, even as we're moving through the physical world and literally being shaken up and uprooted, things changing all around us. That is going to be very significant. It's going to be light at first, but by the time we hit January, there's probably going to be a very significant world event or something that happens that is also going to impact us all on a collective note. So that's been coming up very strongly. And I think that this reading is really alluding to that and the preparation for that. That might have happened more subtly at first. But it is a card that's declaring our victory, right? Once the sun comes up and it rises, it's already beat that darkness, right? Which is called Apep, the enemy of Ra, the enemy of the sun. So it's just like this top card up here, right? The antithesis of the cosmos is the chaos, right? The antithesis of light is dark, of day is night. The antithesis of Ra, the sun, is Apep, right? And that representing like this crystallization of this seemingly unnecessary evil that exists in the world. We have to recognize that it all still serves a purpose. So a lot of us are probably also going to be challenged with judgments, because we have to really be able to see the purpose of even our challenges and the darker expressions of humanity. In order to learn from them and move through them and release them. So that's why things have to come apart. But first, we do have to see them. The light of day has to shine on them. And that's really what the Pertemru card is expressing, is the light being shined through this darkness, through this chaos and this disorder. It's going to show us what really matters so that we can really center ourselves. And this is a journey we're going to be moving through for the next revolution. This next year is going to be very, very significant. And I just hope that people are really preparing themselves for massive changes and transformation. And it's a beautiful opportunity. It's nothing to be afraid of. And I also want to make sure that people know that we're here. Tehuti Ma'at is here to support that. You can also follow Tehuti Ma'at on Instagram as I'm wrapping up the reading. Again, as I said, if you want the entire reading, you can click the link in the description. That's going to allow you to click the link to join our community. You'll get our monthly reports. You'll have access to all our exclusive gatherings. And then if you do choose to join at the higher rank of the Galaxy rank, we are going to begin doing our Navigating Eternity program, which is going to be our accountability community, the JED, as well as the online course, and going through this medicine to orient us into cosmic time. So releasing the European time paradigm, this linear time paradigm that we've been in, moving into the reality of seeing the new year beginning in the spring, using the winter months to actually prepare for that new birthing and the support that is really being brought forward for us to really have a new cycle in the spring. So when we align ourselves with nature, we move into natural efficiency. So it's not about productivity. It's not about working ourselves to death. It's like a lot of people want to have all of this abundance without recognizing that it requires us to embrace those feminine elements of rest, of moving in alignment with our energy. So that's why we have to be aware, have that knowledge of self, so that instead of working harder, we're working with ease, and we're actually allowing the current of the energy to support us. And sometimes we have to release and surrender that control that we want to have over the details and trust that life is going to allow us to get to where we're going. So Navigating Eternity is really essential for that. It's a psycho-spiritual medicine. It's in the form of an online course, and we go through it as with an accountability community. So it's going to be able to support you in whatever your personal endeavors are. If you have any questions, and there's going to be more information coming up about that. So I do want you to make sure that you are following the pages to make sure that you're keeping track. If you're not subscribed, then you should definitely subscribe and hit the notification bell. So when we are doing the live streams and the webinars and the information is coming out about this Navigating Eternity cycle that we're about to start and relaunch the program, then you'll have the information that you need and you'll be able to join. You can also send any questions that you have. If you want to reach out to us, you can email us at grow@tehutimaat.org, and you can also text us at 646-883-MAAT. So I put that at the bottom of the screen as well. So feel free to send us an email with any questions or expressing your interest, and we'll make sure that we get you on the mailing list. And you can also text, as I said, 646-883-MAAT. And if you do choose to join Tehuti Ma'at, you are going to have access to our warrior workout. This winter, we're doing every last Sunday of the month at 8 a.m. Eastern time. We are doing African martial arts with our brother Rob. He's one of the other members of our collective. And you get access to our private Discord server. So our private server is a collaboration with Tehuti Ma'at and the African War College. And that is what we call the ARC, the African Rehabilitation Center. So it's a private community where you're able to connect with others, and you can actually join the different programs that we have on there. Our Intuit Healing Ciphers every month, and our Community Connects are also on our private server. So you get access to all that by becoming a member and so much more. So if you have any questions, and then I didn't mention, we also have a Navigating Eternity Instagram. So you can follow Navigating Eternity on Instagram, because we will be posting more about the program as we're launching again for this winter on the Instagram. So I want to thank you. I hope and pray that you feel supported and trust yourself as you're moving through these cycles, and that the challenges that come up for you, that you embrace them, and that you remember that you have everything that you need to approach them and feel supported by just leaning into everything that I just shared with you. So thank you again, and I'll see you next time. All right. Power, travel light.